can't see a thing. Help me.
March 3rd, 2019, and senior flight attendant Lisa Martinez is serving coffee to passengers on Flight 892 from Phoenix to Seattle when she hears a terrifying scream from the cockpit. Followed by complete silence, she rushes forward to find both pilots unconscious from sudden food poisoning and realizes she has exactly 23 minutes of fuel left to land a Boeing 757 with 186 passengers on board, despite having zero flight training. What happened next will prove that heroes don't always wear pilot uniforms, and that sometimes courage is the only qualification you need to save lives. Stay until the end, because this story will show you what one woman did when 186 people had nobody else to turn to. Lisa Martinez had been a flight attendant for Pacific Coast Airlines for 15 years and had seen almost everything that could happen at 35,000 feet, from medical emergencies to unruly passengers to severe weather turbulence. But nothing in her extensive training had prepared her for what would happen during what started as a routine Friday afternoon flight from Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. At 42 years old, Lisa was known throughout the airline as one of their most experienced and reliable flight attendants. She had worked her way up from domestic routes to international flights and had earned a reputation for staying calm under pressure and going above and beyond to ensure passenger safety and comfort. Her colleagues often joked that she could handle any situation that arose in the cabin, and passengers frequently complimented her professionalism and warm demeanor. Flight 892 was operating with a Boeing 757-200 that morning, carrying 186 passengers and a crew of 6, including Captain Robert Hayes, a veteran pilot with over 2,000 flight hours, and First Officer Jennifer Walsh, who had been flying commercial aircraft for 8 years. The flight was scheduled to depart Phoenix at 1:30 p.m. and arrive in Seattle at 4:15 p.m. Pacific time, covering a distance of approximately 1,100 miles over some of the most beautiful but challenging terrain in the western United States. The passenger manifest that day included a typical mix of business travelers, families, and tourists, with several children traveling alone under the airline's unaccompanied minor program. Among the passengers was Dr. Sarah Chen, a cardiologist from Seattle who was returning from a medical conference in Phoenix and would later play a crucial role in the events that unfolded. Also on board were Michael Rodriguez, a retired air traffic controller, and his wife Carmen, who was celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary. With a trip to visit their daughter in Seattle, the pre-flight preparation had gone smoothly, as Captain Hayes and First Officer Walsh completed their aircraft inspection and flight planning, while Lisa and her fellow flight attendants conducted their safety checks and prepared the cabin for boarding. The weather forecast showed clear skies along their route, with only light winds expected, making it what should have been a pleasant and uneventful flight for everyone involved. Lisa had been assigned to work the forward galley and first-class cabin that day, alongside junior flight attendant Mark Thompson, who had only been with the airline for 6 months. 2 other flight attendants, Rebecca Kim and David Santos, were responsible for the main cabin, while senior flight attendant Patricia Moore supervised the aft galley and emergency exit rows. This experienced crew had worked together on numerous previous flights and had developed excellent teamwork and communication. The boarding process proceeded normally as passengers settled into their seats and stored their carry-on luggage, while the flight attendants performed their safety demonstration and helped travelers with questions about their journey. Captain Hayes made his welcome announcement explaining the flight time, weather conditions, and expected arrival information, while First Officer Walsh completed the final pre-flight checks. Departure from Phoenix occurred on schedule at 1:32 p.m. as the Boeing 757 pushed back from gate A12 and taxied to runway 26 for takeoff. The aircraft lifted off smoothly and began its climb toward the planned cruise altitude of 37,000 feet, while passengers settled in for what they expected to be a routine flight to the Pacific Northwest. The cabin service began normally as Lisa and her colleagues prepared to serve beverages and snacks. For the first hour of flight, everything proceeded exactly according to routine, as the aircraft cruised smoothly through clear skies, while passengers watched movies or dozed in their seats. Lisa moved through the first-class cabin, taking drink orders, and chatting with passengers while keeping an eye on the overall cabin environment to ensure everyone was comfortable and safe. The first indication that something was wrong came at approximately 2:45 p.m. when Captain Hayes called the forward galley interphone and asked Lisa to bring him some water and antacid medication. He explained that both he and First Officer Walsh were feeling somewhat nauseous and thought they might be experiencing mild food poisoning from something they had eaten at the airport before the flight. Lisa immediately prepared the requested items and brought them to the cockpit. When Lisa entered the cockpit, she noticed that both pilots looked pale and were sweating. Despite the cool temperature, Captain Hayes was holding his stomach and grimacing, while First Officer Walsh was leaning back in her seat with her eyes closed. Both pilots assured Lisa that they were feeling better and would be fine, but asked her to keep some additional water and medication nearby in case they needed it. Lisa returned to her duties in the cabin, but kept checking on the cockpit situation every few minutes, as her 15 years of experience had taught her to trust her instincts when something didn't seem right. She could see through the open cockpit door that both pilots were continuing to look increasingly uncomfortable, and she began to worry about their ability to safely operate the aircraft. At 3:18 p.m., Lisa was serving coffee to a passenger in row 2 when she heard Captain Hayes cry out in pain from the cockpit, followed by what sounded like someone collapsing. She immediately excused herself and rushed forward to find Captain Hayes unconscious on the cockpit floor. While First Officer Walsh was slumped over her controls, also apparently unconscious, the aircraft was still flying normally on autopilot, but Lisa realized with horror that nobody was actively piloting the plane. Lisa's first instinct was to check both pilots for signs of life. While trying to determine what had happened to them, Captain Hayes had a pulse, but was completely unresponsive, while First Officer Walsh was also breathing, but could not be awakened despite Lisa's attempts to rouse her. It appeared that both pilots had succumbed to severe food poisoning that had progressed much more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. The aircraft continued flying on autopilot at 37,000 feet, but Lisa knew from her safety training that commercial aircraft could not remain on autopilot indefinitely and that someone would need to take control eventually. She also realized that without pilot input, the aircraft would not be able to descend or land at Seattle as planned, leaving 186 passengers in a life-threatening situation. Lisa immediately called Patricia Moore to the cockpit, and together they assessed the situation. While trying to remain calm and professional, Patricia had 22 years of flight attendant experience, but neither woman had any flight training or experience operating aircraft controls. They were facing a situation that seemed impossible to survive, but they knew they had to try something. The fuel gauges in the cockpit showed that the aircraft had approximately 23 minutes of fuel remaining at current consumption levels, meaning that they would need to find a way to land the aircraft quickly or face the prospect of running out of fuel while still airborne. This added extreme urgency to an already desperate situation and meant there was no time to waste in finding a solution. Lisa made the difficult decision to inform the passengers about their situation while asking if anyone on board had any flight experience. She made a careful announcement explaining that both pilots were experiencing medical emergencies and asking for any passenger who might be able to assist with flying the aircraft. The cabin erupted in concerned voices, but several passengers immediately stood up to offer help. Michael Rodriguez, the retired air traffic controller, came forward immediately and explained his background, while Dr. Chen offered to provide medical assistance to the unconscious pilots. Also volunteering to help was James Parker, a private pilot who flew small aircraft recreationally and had some familiarity with aviation procedures, though he had never flown anything as large as a Boeing 757. Lisa realized that she was now effectively in command of the aircraft and responsible for the lives of everyone on board. Despite having no formal training for such a situation, her years of experience dealing with emergencies and her natural leadership abilities would be tested beyond anything she had ever imagined as she tried to organize a plan to save Flight 892. The moment Lisa Martinez accepted that she was now responsible for safely landing Flight 892 marked the beginning of one of the most extraordinary examples of crisis leadership in aviation history, as she transformed from flight attendant to de facto captain while coordinating the efforts of passengers and crew members who had never imagined they would be called upon to help fly a commercial aircraft. Lisa's first priority was to establish communication with air traffic control to inform them of their emergency situation and request immediate assistance. Michael Rodriguez used his background as a retired air traffic controller to help her operate the radio equipment, and together they contacted Seattle Center to declare an emergency and explain their unprecedented situation. The air traffic controllers who received their emergency call were initially skeptical that both pilots could be incapacitated simultaneously, but quickly recognized the seriousness of the situation and began coordinating with other agencies to provide whatever assistance possible. They immediately cleared all other aircraft from Flight 892's vicinity and began vectoring them toward the nearest suitable airport, which was Portland International Airport in Oregon. Dr. Chen conducted a thorough medical examination of both pilots and confirmed that they were suffering from severe food poisoning that had caused them to lose consciousness. She administered IV fluids and medications to try to revive them, but warned Lisa that it could be hours before either pilot would be capable of resuming their duties. This meant that the passengers and crew would need to land the aircraft themselves. James Parker, the private pilot, proved to be invaluable, as he had at least some understanding of basic flight principles and aircraft systems, though he admitted that flying a Boeing 757 was far beyond anything he had ever attempted. He began studying the cockpit instruments and trying to understand how the various systems worked, while Lisa coordinated the overall effort. Lisa organized the cabin crew to keep the remaining passengers calm and informed, while also asking for additional volunteers who might have any relevant skills or experience. Several passengers came forward, including an aerospace engineer named Robert Kim, who understood aircraft systems, and a computer programmer named Lisa Wong, who was familiar with complex technical systems. The communication with air traffic control became a lifeline as the controllers began providing step-by-step guidance for basic aircraft operations, while simultaneously coordinating with airline technical experts and experienced pilots who could provide additional assistance via radio. This unprecedented situation required collaboration between ground personnel and the improvised flight crew. Lisa realized that her role had evolved from coordinating the emergency response to actually making critical decisions about the flight's operation. She had to decide which advice to follow when different experts provided conflicting recommendations, and she had to maintain confidence and authority even when she felt completely out of her depth. The fuel situation continued to be critical, as consumption remained high due to their altitude and the fact that they had not yet begun their descent toward Portland. Lisa worked with the air traffic controllers to plan a direct route to the airport, while also coordinating with the airline's operations center. To ensure that emergency services would be ready for their arrival, James Parker began attempting to understand the autopilot system and flight management computer with guidance from air traffic control and technical experts on the ground. His private pilot experience gave him some familiarity with basic concepts, but the complexity of the Boeing 757's systems was overwhelming for someone with his limited background. Dr. Chen continued working with the unconscious pilots while also helping to monitor their vital signs and providing medical updates to the ground-based emergency medical teams who were standing by to provide assistance. Once the aircraft landed, her medical expertise proved crucial in understanding the pilot's condition and prognosis. Lisa's leadership style evolved throughout the crisis as she learned to delegate specific tasks to the most qualified individuals while maintaining overall coordination and decision-making authority. She had to balance the need for decisive action with the recognition that she was operating far outside her area of expertise and needed to rely heavily on others. The passengers who were not directly involved in the emergency response remained remarkably calm thanks to Lisa's regular updates and the professional demeanor of the flight attendants who continued to provide reassurance and support. Several passengers later credited Lisa's leadership with preventing panic that could have made the situation even more dangerous. The air traffic controllers began providing increasingly detailed guidance about aircraft descent procedures and approach planning while simultaneously coordinating with Portland International Airport to prepare for an emergency landing. Fire trucks, ambulances, and other emergency equipment were positioned along the runway in preparation for what could potentially be a crash landing. Lisa had to make the difficult decision about when to begin their descent toward Portland, knowing that once they left their current altitude, they would be committed to landing and could not return to cruise flight if something went wrong. This decision required her to balance the critical fuel situation against their readiness to attempt a landing. The coordination between Lisa and the various experts on the ground became increasingly complex, as different agencies provided input and advice while she tried to filter the information and make practical decisions about aircraft operation. Her ability to remain calm under pressure and organize multiple sources of assistance proved to be crucial skills. James Parker's attempts to understand the aircraft, its automated systems, were partially successful as he learned to make basic inputs to the flight management computer, with guidance from ground-based experts. However, the complexity of the approach and landing procedures remained far beyond his capabilities, requiring continued reliance on air traffic control guidance. The flight attendant crew worked together seamlessly, as they had been trained to do during emergencies, with each person taking on specific responsibilities. While supporting Lisa's overall leadership of the situation, their ability to maintain professional composure helped keep the passengers calm and confident despite the unprecedented nature of their emergency. Lisa realized that her years of experience dealing with various types of in-flight emergencies had actually prepared her well for crisis management, even though she had never imagined having to coordinate the actual flying of the aircraft. Her ability to prioritize tasks, communicate clearly, and maintain authority under pressure proved to be exactly what was needed. The technical challenges of operating the Boeing 757's complex systems continued to present obstacles as the improvised crew struggled to understand instruments and procedures that normally required years of training to master. Their success would depend largely on the quality of guidance they received from ground-based experts and their ability to follow instructions precisely. Dr. Chen's medical assessment indicated that both pilots would likely remain unconscious for several more hours, meaning that there was no realistic possibility that they would recover in time to assist with the landing. This meant that Lisa and her team would need to see the emergency through to completion without professional pilot assistance. The fuel calculations provided by air traffic control showed that they had enough fuel for one approach and landing attempt at Portland with minimal reserves, meaning that they would need to execute a successful landing on their first try. This added enormous pressure to an already stressful situation and meant that there would be no opportunity for practice or multiple attempts. The moment when Lisa Martinez had to make the decision to begin their descent toward Portland International Airport represented the point of no return for Flight 892, as she realized that once they left the safety of cruise altitude, there would be no going back and their survival would depend entirely on their ability to execute procedures. Air traffic control began providing detailed step-by-step instructions for initiating the descent, while Lisa coordinated between James Parker, who was attempting to operate the flight controls, and Michael Rodriguez, who was helping with radio communications. The complexity of the Boeing 757's automated systems meant that even simple inputs required careful coordination and multiple confirmation steps. Lisa's role evolved into that of a flight manager, as she had to make decisions about descent rates, power settings, and routing while relying on the expertise of ground controllers who could see their aircraft on radar and provide guidance about their approach to Portland. Her ability to remain calm and organized under extreme pressure became crucial to their success. The initial descent went more smoothly than anyone had dared to hope, as James Parker successfully programmed the autopilot to reduce altitude while maintaining their course toward Portland. The aircraft responded normally to the inputs and began descending at a controlled rate, while air traffic control monitored their progress and provided continuous guidance. Dr. Chen continued monitoring the unconscious pilots, while also preparing for the possibility that they might regain consciousness during the approach and landing phase. She had administered medications to counteract the food poisoning effects, but warned Lisa that recovery would likely be gradual and that the pilots might not be fully capable even if they awakened. The passenger coordination became increasingly important as Lisa realized that they would need to prepare everyone for a potentially rough landing while also maintaining the calm that had prevailed throughout the emergency. She made regular announcements updating passengers on their progress, while the flight attendants helped everyone review emergency procedures and prepare for landing. The fuel situation remained critical, as their consumption during descent was higher than normal due to their unfamiliarity with optimal power management. Air traffic controllers worked with airline technical experts to provide guidance about fuel conservation while also calculating their remaining flight time and approach options. James Parker's private pilot experience proved both helpful and limiting, as he understood basic flight principles but struggled with the complexity of the Boeing 757's advanced systems. His willingness to acknowledge his limitations and follow instructions precisely became more important than his actual flying skills. Lisa had to make increasingly complex decisions about their approach as air traffic control provided options for different runway configurations and approach procedures. Her choices would affect not only their chances of landing safely, but also the positioning of emergency equipment and the coordination of rescue operations. The aerospace engineer Robert Kim proved invaluable in helping to interpret the aircraft's systems and warning lights, while also assisting James Parker in understanding the relationships between different controls and displays. His technical background helped bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application. The communication with Portland International Airport's emergency services became crucial, as Lisa coordinated with ground personnel about their expected arrival time, passenger count, and medical needs. The airport's emergency response teams were preparing for multiple scenarios, ranging from a successful landing to a potential crash. Air traffic control began vectoring Flight 892 toward the instrument landing system for Portland's longest runway, while providing detailed guidance about airspeed, altitude, and heading requirements. The precision required for a safe approach pushed the limits of what their improvised crew could realistically accomplish. Lisa's leadership was tested as various ground-based experts provided conflicting advice about approach procedures and emergency protocols, while she had to make real-time decisions about which guidance to follow. Her ability to synthesize multiple sources of information and make decisive choices proved crucial. The descent through 1,000 feet marked a critical milestone as they entered the more complex phase of the approach, where precise control inputs and timing would be essential. James Parker's hands were shaking as he attempted to make the fine adjustments required, while Lisa provided encouragement and coordination. Chen's medical updates indicated that Captain Hayes was showing some signs of improved consciousness, but remained too disoriented to provide meaningful assistance. This gave everyone hope, while also creating the difficult decision about whether to attempt to involve him in the landing process. The aircraft's automated systems continued to function normally, despite the unconventional operation by untrained personnel, but Lisa knew that the final approach and landing would require manual control inputs that would test their abilities beyond anything they had attempted so far. The coordination between the cockpit crew and cabin crew became even more important as they prepared for landing, with Lisa maintaining overall command while delegating specific responsibilities to the most qualified individuals available. Her ability to organize their limited resources effectively proved crucial. Air traffic control cleared all other aircraft from Portland's airspace and positioned emergency vehicles along their planned approach path, while providing continuous guidance and encouragement to the Flight 892 crew. The unprecedented nature of their situation had captured the attention of aviation professionals worldwide. James Parker's confidence grew as he became more familiar with the aircraft's response to control inputs, but he remained acutely aware that landing would require skills and experience that he simply did not possess. His honesty about his limitations helped Lisa make better decisions about risk management. The final approach phase would require the most precise coordination yet, as Lisa would need to help James Parker manage airspeed, altitude, and aircraft configuration, while also coordinating with the cabin crew to ensure passenger safety. During what could potentially be a very rough landing, Lisa realized that regardless of the outcome, their situation had already demonstrated that extraordinary circumstances can reveal extraordinary capabilities in ordinary people, and that effective leadership and teamwork can overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Her transformation from flight attendant to aircraft commander had saved lives regardless of how their landing would unfold. The approach to Portland International Airport began with Lisa coordinating the final checklist items. While James Parker attempted to follow air traffic control guidance for configuring the aircraft for landing, their success would depend on precise execution of procedures that normally required years of training to master, but which they would need to accomplish through determination and teamwork. The final approach to Portland International Airport tested every aspect of Lisa Martinez's emergency leadership as she coordinated the most complex phase of Flight 892's unprecedented journey, while James Parker attempted to execute landing procedures that pushed far beyond his private pilot capabilities. And the entire crew worked together to achieve what aviation experts later called miraculous, provided continuous guidance as the Boeing 757 descended through the clouds toward runway 10R. With Lisa managing communications while James Parker fought to maintain proper airspeed and altitude, the aircraft was responding normally to control inputs, but the precision required for a safe landing remained far beyond anything their improvised crew had practiced or experienced. The coordination between Lisa and the various ground-based experts intensified as airline technical specialists provided detailed guidance about aircraft configuration, while air traffic controllers managed their approach path, and emergency services prepared for multiple potential outcomes ranging from a successful landing to a crash that would require immediate rescue operations. Dr. Chen reported that Captain Hayes was becoming more responsive, but remained too disoriented from the food poisoning to provide meaningful assistance with flying the aircraft. His occasional attempts to communicate created additional confusion rather than helping with their emergency procedures, confirming that Lisa and her team would need to complete the landing without professional pilot assistance. The passenger preparation became crucial, as Lisa realized that their landing might be rough enough to require emergency evacuation procedures. She coordinated with the flight attendants to brief passengers on evacuation routes and procedures, while also trying to maintain the calm atmosphere that had prevailed throughout their emergency. James Parker's private pilot experience proved both essential and inadequate, as he understood basic landing concepts, but struggled with the complexity of the Boeing 757's approach procedures. His willingness to acknowledge his limitations and follow instructions exactly became more important than his actual flying skills, as he relied entirely on air traffic control guidance. The aircraft's automated systems continued to function properly, despite the unconventional operation, which allowed James Parker to rely on the autopilot for basic flight path control while making manual adjustments for airspeed and aircraft configuration. This technological assistance proved crucial to their success. Lisa had to make critical decisions about landing configuration as ground-based experts provided guidance about flap settings, gear deployment, and approach speed, while she coordinated between James Parker's inputs and the continuous stream of instructions from air traffic control and airline technical personnel. The fuel situation remained tight, as their approach consumed their reserves more quickly than optimal. Due to their unfamiliarity with proper power management techniques, air traffic controllers calculated that they had sufficient fuel for one landing attempt with minimal reserves, meaning that success on the first approach was essential. The aerospace engineer Robert Kim continued providing valuable assistance in interpreting instrument readings and helping James Parker understand the relationships between different aircraft systems. His technical knowledge helped bridge the gap between the complex Boeing 757 systems and James Parker's basic flying experience. Air traffic control positioned emergency vehicles along the runway and cleared the airport of all other traffic, while providing Flight 892 with priority handling and continuous guidance. The unprecedented nature of their emergency had attracted attention from aviation experts worldwide who were monitoring their progress. Lisa's leadership evolved to include making split-second decisions about approach parameters while maintaining coordination between multiple team members and ground-based advisors. Her ability to process complex information quickly and make decisive choices proved crucial to their survival. The descent below 1,000 feet marked the beginning of the most critical phase. As James Parker attempted to maintain the proper glide path, while Lisa coordinated with air traffic control about landing procedures and emergency protocols, the precision required pushed their improvised crew to the absolute limits of their capabilities. Dr. Chen positioned herself to provide immediate medical assistance to the pilots after landing while also helping monitor their condition during the approach. Her medical expertise ensured that they would be ready to treat the food poisoning victims as soon as the aircraft was safely on the ground. The flight attendants completed final cabin preparations while maintaining passenger confidence through professional demeanor and clear communication. Their training in emergency procedures proved invaluable as they prepared for potential evacuation while keeping everyone calm and ready. James Parker's hands were steady as he followed air traffic control guidance for the final approach. Despite his lack of experience with large aircraft, his concentration and determination to follow instructions precisely became more important than formal training, as he relied entirely on ground-based expertise. Lisa realized that their success demonstrated the extraordinary capabilities that emerge when ordinary people face impossible circumstances and refuse to give up. Her transformation from flight attendant to aircraft commander had already saved lives regardless of their landing outcome. The touchdown occurred at 4:23 p.m. Pacific Time as James Parker successfully guided the Boeing 757 onto runway 10R, following Lisa's coordination and air traffic control guidance. The landing was harder than normal, but within safe parameters as the aircraft rolled out and came to a stop with emergency vehicles immediately surrounding them. The immediate aftermath saw Lisa coordinating the passenger evacuation while Dr. Chen provided medical care to the recovering pilots and emergency personnel boarded the aircraft to assist with the situation. Her leadership had successfully brought 186 passengers and crew safely to the ground, despite facing an impossible situation. The debriefing with aviation authorities revealed the extraordinary level of coordination and teamwork that had made their survival possible, while highlighting Lisa's exceptional leadership under pressure and her ability to organize untrained individuals into an effective emergency response team. Captain Hayes and First Officer Walsh recovered fully from their food poisoning within hours and were able to provide detailed accounts of their medical emergency while expressing amazement at what Lisa and her team had accomplished during their incapacitation. Their professional assessment was that the emergency response had been handled better than many scenarios involving trained personnel. The Federal Aviation Administration conducted a comprehensive investigation that resulted in new procedures for handling dual pilot incapacitation emergencies, while also recognizing Lisa's actions as representing extraordinary leadership and decision-making under pressure that had prevented a potential catastrophe. Lisa's story became legendary within the aviation industry as an example of how effective leadership and teamwork can overcome seemingly impossible challenges while demonstrating that heroes can emerge from any background when circumstances demand extraordinary action and courage. The passengers from Flight 892 remained connected as a group and credited Lisa's leadership with not only saving their lives, but also providing an inspiring example of what people can accomplish when they refuse to accept defeat and work together toward a common goal. Pacific Coast Airlines promoted Lisa to a management position in their safety and emergency response department, where her experience and leadership abilities could benefit the entire organization, while she also became a sought-after speaker at aviation conferences worldwide. The aircraft was thoroughly inspected and returned to service with a special plaque commemorating the extraordinary flight, while James Parker was inspired to pursue additional flight training and eventually became a commercial pilot himself, citing Lisa's leadership as the inspiration for his career change today. Lisa Martinez continues to work in aviation safety while also serving as an advocate for enhanced emergency training and crew resource management programs that recognize the potential contributions of all crew members, regardless of their formal role or training background. Lisa Martinez's incredible story proves that true leadership isn't about having a title or formal training, but about stepping up when lives are on the line and organizing whatever resources are available to overcome impossible challenges. Her transformation from flight attendant to aircraft commander saved 186 lives and demonstrated that heroes can emerge from any background when circumstances demand extraordinary courage and determination. But I want to hear from you. What do you think gave Lisa the strength to take command of that aircraft, despite having no flight training? Was it her 15 years of experience dealing with emergencies, her natural leadership abilities, or something deeper about human nature that emerges in crisis situations? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to step outside your comfort zone and take charge when others were counting on you? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below and let me know what this story means to you. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of ordinary people who did extraordinary things when faced with impossible circumstances, and hit that notification bell, so you never miss these inspiring tales that show us what we're capable of when we refuse to give up and work together to save lives.